For millions of years, dinosaurs were the dominant species on the planet. They came in all shapes and sizes, from the smallest scavengers to giant, slow-moving herbivores. But this wasn't a time for the weak. With predators sporting the biggest teeth ever and prey that could defend themselves with giant bony clubs, threats came from every direction. Get ready to run for your life because these are the 15 most dangerous dinosaurs in the world. Kronosaurus. The Kronosaurus was a type of short-necked plesiosaur that swam in the world's oceans during the early Cretaceous period around 140 million years ago. Two different species have so far been discovered, one whose fossils were unearthed in Australia and the other that was found in Colombia. They grew to up to 36 feet long and are believed to be one of the largest plesiosaurs ever. The name means Lizard of Kronos, in reference to the leader of the Greek Titans. They had long heads and a large rigid body. Their flippers were how they swam through the water. And they had sharp conical teeth for tearing into flesh. Most specimens had teeth that were up to 3 inches long, but some examples have been found that are a terrifying 12 inches long. They probably weighed anything up to 14 tons, and because they were lizards, would have had to return to the surface every few hours to fill their large lungs with oxygen. At the time this species was alive, there's no other known creature that was anywhere near the same size. Kronosaurus was, therefore, the dominant predator, and would have made light work of anything they came up against. Naptrudon. The bird-like Trudon formosus was one of the first dinosaur species to be found in North America. When paleontologists dug up a set of fossils in Montana in 1855. For more than 20 years, they were thought to be a large species of lizard from more recently. But as more became known about the deposit where the fossils were found, it became clear that they were a species of dinosaur that were dated to a specific time during the Cretaceous period around 77 million years ago. The name quite ominously means wounding tooth, and this is in reference to their sharp and serrated teeth that would have been used to inflict serious damage on their prey, and were likely powerful enough to tear chunks of flesh. While the victim was very much, their geographical spread meant that, depending on where they were, they had slight differences according to climate. Those in colder regions, for example, were several feet taller than their 4 or 5 foot long cousins from more temperate climates, and it's even thought that the amount of feather covering they had would alter based on how warm they needed to be. It's not clear if they were ferocious carnivores or scavengers, or even if they worked together in groups, but you certainly wouldn't have wanted to come across one if it was feeling hungry. Allosaurus. The Allosaurus was a carnivorous dinosaur that lived during the late Jurassic period around 150 million years ago. Their remnants have been found in the fossil-rich regions of North America and were first discovered in Colorado in 1869. There are actually 6 different known species of Allosaurus, all of which had very unusual vertebrae, which is why the name means different lizard. They walked on 2 legs and were up to 31 feet long in most cases, although some fossil specimens have suggested they could be up to 45 feet long. They most likely weighed several tons and were probably the apex predators of the time, preying on most of the other large dinosaur species. They are known to have hunted Stegosaurus, for example, after an Allosaurus tail vertebrae was found with a puncture wound that's the shape of the spike from a Stegosaurus tail. There have also been some examples of 2 specimens being found very close to each other, which has led researchers to suspect they may have been pack hunters, which would have made them even more deadly. This could instead be a sign that they fought with each other, however. So it's hoped that future discoveries may once and for all solve the question of whether they had a complex social hierarchy or not. Sarcosuchus. The Sarcosuchus, which means flesh crocodile, was an early ancestor of today's crocodiles that lived during the early Cretaceous period around 120 million years ago. It was one of the largest crocodilians to ever walk the planet, and could grow to more than 30 feet long and weigh as much as 3.5 tons. 2 species have been found, one that lived in modern-day Brazil and the other whose remains have been found across Africa. It was only by the year 2000 that enough specimens had been found to fully describe them, and they had some noticeable differences to what we think of with crocodiles. Their top jaws were significantly stronger than their lower jaws. For example, and they would have preyed on aquatic animals, as well as venturing onto land to hunt smaller species of dinosaur. Curiously, their physiology suggests they wouldn't have been able to perform the so-called death roll that crocodiles use to dismember their prey, so would have either had an alternative technique to perform the same task or simply swallowed everything whole. Ankylosaurus. The chances are that you've heard of an ankylosaurus, as they were the dinosaurs that were covered in armor plating and had a huge club on the end of their tails. They lived during the end of the Cretaceous period between 68 and 66 million years ago, and their remains have been found across North America. Surprisingly, for such a well-known species, a full fossil has never been found. Because of this, everything we know is based upon partial specimens, but researchers are fairly certain that they grew to around 26 feet long and weighed up to 8 tons. As well as the easily identifiable features, they also had huge horns that pointed back from their heads, and another set of horns that pointed downwards beneath them. Their noses faced sideways, and they had a break over their mouths. To have so much armor, Ankylosaurus must have been very strong and muscly, and would have been able to wield their tails with brutal effectiveness. Just one strike with this devastating weapon would have been enough to instantly kill most predators, and, if not, severely injure them. Not